thank you all for being here this evening. It's so nice to see kind of so many new faces as well as so many familiar faces from the Warburg. Yeah, so today I have the pleasure of welcoming Soraya Syed, who will be talking to us more about her journey and practice as a calligrapher. So I just want to quickly thank Soraya for agreeing to talk to us today, and also thank the London Arts and Humanities Partnership for enabling this online talk and the forthcoming in-person workshop to happen. So Soraya will be talking for about, the talk and demonstration will last for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to discussion. So I'm just going to leave it there in terms of introduction, because I know that Soraya will be talking in more detail about her work, probably more kind of elaborately than I would be able to. So yeah, I'll pass over to you, Soraya. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the Warburg Institute for organising this and for inviting me this evening. The presentation I will give is largely personal. It's about my journey from being an apprentice to becoming a calligrapher and my current practice. And I will then do a short demo, and I look forward to all of your questions. So I will just share the screen. And if anybody can't see something or hear something, please do unmute and let me know. Thank you. I'm often asked how I became a calligrapher, and I'm not entirely sure. However, I just remember this overwhelming feeling of a need to study this art of Arabic calligraphy. And at the time, I did not know any Arabic. I did not even know the letters of the Arabic alphabet. But I was just so taken by the art. I think I first came in touch with Islamic art through collections in museums in Paris and London, particularly the V&A, and I'm showing some pictures that I took as a student those many years ago. And I wasn't sure how to become a calligrapher, so I thought the best way would be to study Arabic, and then went to SOAS to do a degree in Arabic history of art and archaeology. So it was during my second year of the degree that I went to Egypt, and fortunately for me, within the first week of arriving, I dialed the wrong number, thinking I was ringing a friend, and the man on the other side of the phone happened to be a calligrapher. And within the first week of arriving, I started my lessons in calligraphy. On returning to the UK, my teacher, Bilal Ibrahim Muhammad in Egypt, suggested I find another teacher, as he felt that he took me as far as he could go with me. So the search began when I returned back to London, and it was not easy to find a teacher. These were the days before social media, so I couldn't follow any calligraphers online and contact them. But fortunately for me, in 1999, a group of Turkish artisans were invited to tour the UK, and I heard of this 2-week apprenticeship in Norwich, and so off I went. So to the left we have the calligrapher, my teacher, Feridun Kilic, on the left, and on the right, Mahmoud Manning, who was one of the organisers bringing these artisans to the UK. The first lesson I received from Daladim Hoca, so Hoca means teacher or master in Turkish, was the Rabbi Yassir, and the Rabbi Yassir is a prayer. Rabbi Yassir wala tu'assir, Rabbi Tamim bil khair. Oh Lord, make this task easy. Do not make it difficult. Oh Lord, end it in goodness. So this is quite a daunting first lesson to receive, to try and imitate, but the aim is not to replicate it perfectly, but rather it's a way of focusing your intention and seeing if you have the endurance and stamina to continue. And I have no idea how many times I had to repeat this, but I do remember I had to write it again and again and again. I realized quite quickly within the first 2 weeks of the apprenticeship that it was not, the education was not just going to be about technical skill and imitating the letters perfectly. It was a more encompassing education or tarbiyah, where other aspects such as refinement of character were important, and often Abdallah Hoxha would question me and show me examples of calligraphy compositions and books and ask for my opinion, as if he was testing me to see if I had a good eye or not. And there was another incident where an apprentice woodcarver came in and brought a stool that he had carved, and Abdullah Hoxha asked me my opinion of it, and I said I wouldn't sit on it because it looked like a Quran stand, and I felt that I had answered correctly because well, some things are not spoken, they're just understood, and that there's an adab or etiquette around the art of calligraphy.
Soraya, sorry, I think the sound is a little bit muffled. Would it be possible to maybe move your microphone a little bit and see if it works better? Sorry, thank you.
We've also, I've got also lots of fireworks in the background due to Diwali, so I'm not sure if that's helping. Is that any better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So after the apprenticeship, I tried sending my meshks or my practice sheets by snail mail, by post. And it took a long time between getting feedback from Hoxha. You know, in those days, email was not really popular, or scanning at that time. And this is, I was practicing here in this photograph at the Prince's School while undertaking my MA in visual and Islamic and traditional arts. So as soon as I had the opportunity, I went to visit Istanbul, and the first place that Abdallah Hoxha took me to was to meet his master, Hatat Hassan Chalabi, and that was quite an honor to meet him. And we're standing here in Üsküdar in front of his son's atelier or workshop. His son is a very well-known illuminator. The second place I was taken to straight after visiting Hassan Hoxha was the cemetery. The cemetery is called Karaca Ahmed Cemetery in Üsküdar, and it is well known for it's the burial place of many renowned calligraphers. To the left, we have the burial place of Sheikh Hamdullah, and Sheikh Hamdullah is believed to be the founding father of Ottoman calligraphy. And in front of his tomb, we have the burial place of Hatat Hamid Effendi, who died in the 1980s. And it's quite interesting to see how calligraphers are buried together like this, instead of being buried next to a relative, for example. A common practice still to this day is for students to leave their reed pens at the gravestones and pick them up a week later, hoping that they receive the barakah or the blessing of the deceased master. So after writing the Rabbi Yassir, we moved on to writing what we call mufradat, which are the single letters of the alphabet and combination of the two letters together. And this process can take a long time, maybe even a couple of years, possibly more. And it really depends on the student, the amount of time they can devote to the practice and also their ability. And once you have finished writing the mufradat, you move on to murakabat, which are the qasidas or lines from poetry or Quranic verses. So you're building up. I remember Hassan Chalabi Hodja, who we saw in the earlier slide, say how he had to write the Rabbi Yassir for 2 years. So that was quite a long time, but it just shows how much patience is required. And out of respect for his teacher, he didn't want to remind his teacher or try and get his teacher to move on quicker than what he thought his teacher required of him. His Hodja was Hafat Hamid Effendi, whose gravestone we just saw in the previous slide. So I'm showing this photo because I just love to put a picture of Istanbul in there, but this in fact was the view from my apartment. So once I finished my MA, I moved to Istanbul so that I could focus on the training, and I was newlywed at the time, so it was quite an exciting time, and it's lovely to wake up to this view every day. So training the eye is just as important as the hand. And so being in Istanbul meant that I could be immersed in the most splendid examples of Islamic calligraphy. And these are examples from the Eye of Sophia in Istanbul. So these photographs are from a typical classroom setting, and to the left we have Hassan Hodja, and then we have Daladin at the top, and Enis Furun, who's originally from Syria, at the bottom. And this is all one class. All 3 teachers are teaching at the same time in the same classroom because they're all from the same school. So Hassan Hodja is their teacher. So if you entered the classroom and you saw one teacher was too busy with lots of students, you could always go and see another teacher. And the atmosphere is always quite, well, the thirst to learn is very tangible in these settings, and while it's very respectful, it's also a very friendly atmosphere where everyone's just wanting to learn from one another. And it can be quite daunting at first because everyone sees your mistakes. And essentially this is an art form which is learned through error, and everyone can see your faults, but it's good for your ego that you can put it to one side and you just share, and everyone learns from one another. So it's a very special experience. So as well as learning directly from your Hodja, an essential part of an apprentice's kit is a practice book by Shauki Effendi, who was a 19th century calligrapher. And Shauki is, I mean, his words, his letters, the way he writes are just incredibly beautiful, and I never tire of looking at them or trying to emulate them. And it is said that Shauki Effendi was taught in dreams and was taught directly from the Prophet Muhammad. So when you look at his work and you try to emulate it, it's as if you're channeling that blessing. And for me, this is a visual manifestation of the spiritual. So training culminates in the ijaza, or the calligraphy license, which authorizes the new calligrapher to sign his or her own work and to take on students. And I'm showing my ijaza on the right, which is not illuminated, and to the left you can see it's being mounted, wet mounted in preparation for illumination and framing. And this is being done by Osman Özçay, who's a renowned calligrapher, and his brother too, and his sister's an amazing illuminator. And there's so much to learn when you're in this environment. So you learn from other calligraphers too, so different techniques. So I learned, so much from this wet mounting process that they're using on the left from them. So usually when you receive your ijaza, it's in a ceremony called an ijazat ceremony, and this one took place in 2005 at the Yildiz Saray, which is Centre for Ursika, and it's quite a prestigious event. It's quite crowded, lots of people come to witness the ceremony, and there's usually quite a group of calligraphers receiving their license. This calligrapher is actually from Egypt, and he was in his 80s when he received his license, which just goes to show that you can never be too old to take this art up and to take it all the way. So this is how the ijaza looks after illumination. And so this is the splendid illumination by Fatma Özçay, and it's signed by both Ifdaluddin Kılıç, my teacher and Hoja, and his master Hattat Hasan Çelebi in the left. And Ifdal Hoja has written in Osmanlıca, in Ottoman Turkish, and Hattat Hasan Çelebi has written in Arabic. And both of them, when they sign, they also mention that they're a student of so-and-so, so that their isnad or their lineage is confirmed in the certificate, in the license. But the ijaza does not mean that the one who gets it writes without imperfection, not at all. There's many, many more years of hard work, especially when it comes to writing compositions and trying to get a balance right. So I'm just showing some early samples of my work. This is light upon light, and I've tried to, it's a Quranic verse, and I've tried to arrange the words in a staggered upward motion here to reflect radiant light. And this is a cup of love. It's in the shape of a goblet, and at the top is the divine name Allah. So when you're writing compositions, you, out of respect, you try your best to keep the divine name high up in the composition. This is another Quranic verse, which was a private commission. Everyone acts according to his own disposition. Yahweh, one of the divine names. And this is another composition where I've tried to keep the divine name. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's up here. Do you see my cursor? Okay. So not long after receiving the ijaza, I returned back to the UK, and it could be quite isolating working alone day in, day out on your own compositions. So I started to get requests to collaborate and put my work into other objects, and so I really welcome this. And we have examples here of my work in furniture and a cabinet. This is working with an interior designer in Paris and with a craftsman for a client here in the UK, and to the left a lamp for a hotel in Medina, in the city of Medina in Saudi Arabia. So I started to think about storytelling through the calligraphy and how the calligraphy could come off the page and into other dimensions. And this sort of line of inquiry took me to develop a project called Korea, meaning freedom, which resulted in a large-scale animation installation at the Leighton House Museum in London as part of a solo show in 2013. So it took me quite a long time to write all the frames to make the animation. So over 1,358 frames were handwritten to make the animation, and the animation was just over 2 minutes long. The connection between the human form, the physicality of it, and the way it moves through three-dimensional space to me is very calligraphic. And the choreographer Salal Brudi, who is an Egyptian choreographer, was commissioned to respond to the animation. And we have a picture of him in the top right with the musician Nitin Sawhney, who actually composed the music for the animation. But my curiosity in using Arabic calligraphy and storytelling through the human form has led to the development of a proof of concept film called Majnoon in 2019. And here are some stills from the film. Majnoon is inspired by Nizami's 12th century poem Layla and Majnoon. Wakfs falls in love with Layla, and his love drives him insane, earning him the epithet Majnoon, or madman, and his descent into madness is juxtaposed by the increasingly beautiful art he creates in a tale of man's long artistic brilliance and journey towards personal annihilation. In 2015, I was commissioned by Bradford Museums to respond to, I could choose an object, any object in their collection, and I chose this pen case, brass pen case, from the 19th century, and it's called The Pen and the Sword, and it harks back to a saying by the Prophet Muhammad that the ink of the scholar is more holy than the blood of the martyr, and the more recent English adage that the pen is mightier than the sword. So it's this antique brass pen case in a holographic kind of case, and it has the pens inside the pen case, and the inkwell is open, and then the letters start to emanate out of the inkwell. So it can take people by surprise, because you think you're just looking at another object in a case, but then it comes alive, and we can watch it here. It's just under a minute long, and there is no sound. I'm sometimes asked to come on board a project as a consultant. And in 2015, I was approached by my dear teacher, Professor Keith Critchlow, to come on board to advise and provide some calligraphy designs for the new mosque in Cambridge. One of the designs was for the brickwork, which we see here in square Kufic. It's in a pattern of the Quranic verse, Hu Allah Ahad. Say Allah is one, sort of repeated. Yeah. Hu Allah Ahad. There's one unit there, sort of repeated throughout the brickwork of the mosque. And the image on the right is just from the meetings that we would have with the architect Mark Garfield on the left and Professor Keith Critchlow on the right. One of the most interesting commissions I have received was from the Royal Shakespeare Company in 2016, and they asked me to respond to a quote from Henry IV, Part 2. My gracious Lord, my Father, this sleep is sound indeed. It marks a profound moment when Prince Hal is at the king's deathbed and he realizes that his life is about to change. He will have to leave behind a life of frivolity and take on the responsibility of the role of monarch he is soon to inherit. Prince Hal is waking from a metaphorical deep sleep as his father lay in front of him. So the text, this sleep is sound indeed, is repeated twice around this crown. And the crown is a potent symbol of authority and alters not only how the wearer feels, but also how he or she is perceived. So the crown, a deep sleep, plays on the ideas surrounding perception and representation. Another memorable commission was a collaboration with Google. During Ramadan 2018, I was asked to design Eid greetings using the virtual reality software called Tilt Brush. They also at the same time made a short film following me back to Istanbul to share this new VR work with my teacher, Davidin Kilic. And these are some of the behind the scenes. So you can watch the short film on YouTube if you just search Soraya's story, A Calligrapher's Journey. So due to the lockdown in January this year, I worked live and remotely from my studio in London with artist Tatiana Halbach, who was in Barcelona. And we worked simultaneously in virtual reality for a charitable project called Across Borders. So I'm going to show a short clip of us working together, creating a virtual calligraphic landscape based on the text of a Spanish proverb, "The tree is known by its fruit, not by its roots." So the following clip has no sound. Coming back to more traditional calligraphy, This work in the center is the first of two calligraphy compositions that were on display at the Making Paradise exhibition at the Aga Khan Centre in London. After an extended run, the show just came down last week. The Quranic verse reads, God has prepared for them gardens under which rivers flow to dwell therein. So it is written in a combination of square kufit and thuluth. The layout of the calligraphy reflects the fourfold Islamic style garden or jihad bar. Square kufit arrangement is reminiscent of brickwork. And yes, and so it was to accompany this exhibition all about paradise. It was a group show with splendid works, and see these lovely pieces either side of the calligraphy. And the second work that was on display at the show was specifically commissioned for it. And it reads, and we made out of water every living thing. It is written in Jali thuluth, or sulus as they say in Turkish, and on handmade ebru or marble paper. And the composition is mirrored or muthanna, a reminiscence of water reflecting. The struggle to attain almost perfection in the art of Islamic calligraphy never ends. And we see here Hassan Chalabi Hoja with his student, who's also a calligrapher at this stage, Farhat Kurlu, who's still going to his master and showing works, because there's always so many ways of writing the same thing, and you always want to continue that relationship with your Hoja and to get that feedback. You know, Hatat Hamid Effendi was known to have said that even 100 years wasn't enough to write calligraphy really well. And when you meet Hassan Hoja, I think every time I meet him, he tells me to work even more harder. So originally it was, I think, the 26 hours into your working day, and then it went up to 30 hours in your working day, just to kind of illustrate the amount of effort and vigor that is required in this art form. And generally, a person can't become a calligrapher without following this whole process that I've shown here. And Hassan Hoja says that if a letter deviates from the proper form, even as much as the size of a flea's liver, it will be ugly. So a talented person might be able to replicate at first sight, but when you look at the detail, the beauty of the letters aren't really there. And in Turkish, there's a saying that a teacher's instructions are there to, well, calligraphy is like an iron chickpea, and the teacher's explanation softens it like wax. Once you receive your license or your ijaza, you become part of a family of calligraphers that goes back generations. According to Turkish sources, the method or the tradition of training to become a calligrapher started in the 15th century. And Istanbul has remained largely the center of Islamic calligraphy because of this master apprenticeship system where rules are transmitted from generation to generation. And the chain of transmission has remained unbroken. And this is the picture of the silsila, or the calligrapher's chain of transmission. To conclude, my understanding of the bridge between the spiritual and the material is still developing. I'm curious why, as a teenager, I was so captivated by an art I did not literally understand. Perhaps in my past, there were other calligraphers in my family, and I've recently become interested in my genealogy or shajara that goes back to the Sufi saint Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, who died in 1166 and is buried in Baghdad, Iraq. There is a long-standing link between Sufism and Islamic calligraphy, and Sufi lodges throughout Islamic history have supported the art form by patronizing many prominent calligraphers. So this is a photocopy of my family tree copied by a scribe in Lahore, which is mainly in Persian with Arabic benedictions and notes in Urdu. If anyone here is researching Sufism and Islamic art or calligraphy, please do get in touch, especially if it's concerning the subcontinent. I will now give a short demonstration, and we'll just stop sharing this screen while I turn to another. Sure why it's not showing up, so bear with me, please. Try it again. Ah, there it is. Okay. Everybody see that all right? If I go off the screen, you'll probably just have to unmute and let me know, and I'll reposition everything. So I use a variety of pens, really depending on the scale of the calligraphy. So I know they're made from all different materials. This one has a copper nib. If you're writing in jali or very large, these pens are very good, where the nib is actually made from wood and it's put into a reed holder. Oops, that one's rolling away. This one has another reed inside a holder, which is from Java. It's called a Java pen, and it's quite good for writing very small text like Nask in the sea. This nib is made from bone. I just like to show it, but actually I'm not too keen on using it. It's too hard on the paper. This is another large scale pen. And bamboo is different from ordinary reeds in that it tends to have this straight edge to it. But my favorite pen is this humble reed, which comes from Iran, and it's what you would use when you're practicing your mesh and when you're starting out, and it's quite good for smaller scripts, but also because the nib has a bit of flexibility in there, so it gives you, it's quite easy to write with. So I'll demonstrate how to open a reed pen. So this is what it looks like when it's unopened. When you select a reed, you generally want one that is not too much larger than your the width of your handspan. And you choose the narrowest end to start opening the pen. And you can measure 2 to 3 fingers from the tip. I'm going to use calligraphy knife. This one is from Iran. So I also use what's called a makta, which is made out of bone, which helps to rest the pen on and to open it. So usually I would take the pen to the edge of the table, which means I would be out of shot. So I'm kind of doing it here. Different calligraphers open their pens in different ways. This is how I learned from my teacher. Shaving the sides. Turn it out a bit more. You need to make a split down the middle, but not too far down. Then I'm going to cut the nib at an angle. I'm going to stand up for this, so you won't see anything, but hopefully you'll hear what we're listening out for is a nice clean cut, and that means that the nib has been cut successfully. I'm not sure if did you all hear that? Okay, good. So then you can just continue to refine and try it out. So you should be able to see the split that I made. If I press it against my thumbnail, it should just be a little bit visible. That's ready to use. I'm going to get my ink. This ink is made from soot, Arabic water. It also has rose water in it, so it smells very nice each time you open the pot. I'll write with a slightly larger pen so that you can see easily. So my pen will sing, or for some people it might be a squeaky sound, so you might want to switch me off if you don't find the sound too enjoyable. is what you would call a mesh or practice of the Rabbi Yassin, which I write all the time. I probably write almost daily, and it's just a nice prayer. I'm putting in the measuring dots. All the letters have proportions. Pen isn't usually this squeaky. I think it's, I'm not sure there's the paper. So all the lines to show you how to transcribe properly the lesson. So I hope that was good enough taste. I'll stop sharing now, and we can open up for questions.
Okay, great. So before we open up for questions, I would quite like to ask a question myself. And just to let everyone know, so if you do want to ask a question, please use the raise hand function. So it's under reactions in the bottom right hand of your screen. So you can just click on reactions and then click on raise hand, and I'll ask you to unmute. But yeah, if I can sneak a question in beforehand. I guess one of the reasons I was interested in talking to you, Soraya, as well, was before I had a teacher who took his time out of his lunchtime to give us calligraphy lessons at lunchtime, and it was amazing. Arabic calligraphy lessons, and often before he showed us how to write a letter or a word, he would really talk not just about the meaning of the word, but then also the shape that it was going to take on the page and how that relates to the movement and the breath. And I don't know if that's a very kind of traditional way of looking at it, but these three things are something that come up in my research today. So I look at the work of Ibn Arabi and how he conceptualizes language. And he often will give these kind of multiple levels of meaning to words and letters. So they won't just have a semantic meaning, but they'll also have a cosmological significance. So they can signify stars, or they can also signify numbers, levels of being in the universe. And these different meanings are often tied together by the shape and the movement that you make when you're writing them. So I was wondering, and I think this came up in your presentation as well, how the relationship between meaning, word, image, and movement come into your work. If that's something you think about when you're working. And also maybe if more broadly, if your work as a calligrapher has shaped how you think about language or changed how you think about language now.
Wow, that's quite a big question. where to start. So I think that, yes, I mean, I'm fascinated by how the Arabic words have this power or meaning beyond its literal, and it's clear that some things can be taught and other things are not or cannot be. And it's I still feel that I'm learning a lot about the art through the practice. The breath is really important, or the lack of breath, and sometimes they say that calligraphers live a lot to a ripe old age because they're saving their breath. They're not using it, and it really, your state of mind can impact the way you write. It can impact your breath. So even writing just now, I could feel that perhaps I needed to do a bit more breathing before writing. So that's, yeah. I mean, there's so much that I feel I do not know, or that is still yet to be revealed to me, as it were. So you probably know more because you've been studying Ibn Arabi than than I do, whereas for me it's probably more intuitive. So it's a different kind of knowledge, I would say.